Welcome to Perspective and Potential, where we uncover new ways to see the world and tap into the incredible potential within each of us. I'm Abigail Straight, joined by my co host and mother, Gwen Fund. Together, we'll explore ideas, stories, and strategies designed to help you grow, shift your perspective, and embrace a more complete version of yourself. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can check us out at perspectiveandpotential.com. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in and see where a new perspective might take you. Today, we're diving into a topic that every single one of us deals with or hopes to deal with, and that is setting goals. We've all had these moments where we get excited about a big idea or a fresh start, only to find ourselves losing steam, maybe a few weeks or even a few days later. And it can leave us wondering, am I just bad at this? Or is there a better way to set myself up for success? So sometimes when we talk about goals, we stop at the dream itself, I think. Things like, I want to get healthier. I want to save money, or I want to spend more time with family. Um, and I think at the heart, those are really good, noble ambitions. But I kind of like to refer to that as just the fantasy part of setting a goal, because saying it out loud doesn't just make it happen. A dream on its own doesn't carry the structure that it needs to actually change our lives. And that's why goals have to be more than just ideas floating around in our minds. They need to be shaped into something clear and actionable, something that we can actually measure and follow through on. Without that, I think it's just pretty easy to get frustrated. And that's why we sometimes give up before we really even get started.
Well, and sometimes it's that structure, I think, that, kind of scares people. But there is an old saying that a goal without a plan is just a wish. The stepping stones that we use on the path to any success in life are solid, attainable goals that have been carefully constructed with both long term and short term goalposts that will help us stay on course. So, making and achieving goals is like taking a trip. Both take a lot of planning in the beginning before you actually embark on the journey. You have to know where you want to go and how you can get there. You want to figure out what this trip is going to cost in terms of time and money. And you need to figure out if you can accomplish it on your own or if you're going to need some help. And if you need help, what kind of help? Or who is it that maybe can supply that help for you?
Picture of thinking about goals as a trip for a couple of reasons. Often, what motivates us to take the trip is the destination. But if you think about trips that you've been on, oftentimes it is the journey part of that that is also incredibly memorable and gets you excited about doing it again. And I think goals are very similar. We think about the end result that we're trying to achieve. But once you get there, once you get to that destination, sometimes looking back, you realize that the effort that it took you to get there is part of what actually changed and evolved you as a person. Because if you just jump in the car also without knowing where you're headed or what it's going to take to get there, maybe sometimes you'll even get lost or run out of gas, right? And that's, I think, what happens with our goals. We set the destination in our mind, but we don't always prepare, like you said, for what it's going to take to get there. Um, and those little steps, then that's what matters so much. Writing down a goal, breaking it into smaller pieces, asking for help when we need it. Those are the things that I think keep us moving forward. And when we do that, we don't just feel stuck staring at how far away the end is. Instead, we can actually see progress. And that builds the confidence to keep going. And again, I think this is what makes it repeatable in the future. People who are avid goal setters, it's not just about something inside of them. Maybe some of that, but I really believe that it is you've you're teaching yourself that it is through that hard work that you've been able to attain new goals, and then it almost can become a little bit addicting.
Well, success is addicting, and rarely does anything amazing happen without some kind of preparation. Whether you're planning your day or planning a dinner with a friend, making sure you get your homework done, or taking a vacation, you need to have a plan. Some people are detailed planners with every moment scheduled and accounted for, while others prefer to live life a little more spontaneously. But even the most spontaneous among us make decisions, and that unlocks an unfolding plan. The difference is the outcome and the level of control that we have over that outcome. Good planners are more likely to have good outcomes.
I like how you pointed out that distinction because over planning too, um, I think it's something we have to be cautious with. Over planning and not being flexible when something doesn't happen, that can be frustrating to something that you've been putting in place.
I always like to have a plan B in my.
Yep, contingency plans are, and maybe it's plan C, plan D, right? It might keep going, and I think what that teaches us too is, um, again, being flexible and w willing to adjust along the way, possibly frequently, in order to still get to, the desired destination. Because planning doesn't mean that you have to turn into someone who does schedule, like you said, every minute of your life or writes out color coded lists for every single thing. It just means being intentional about where your time and energy are going. So even a simple plan, a short list, a couple priorities for the day can make the difference between feeling like life is happening to you and feeling like you're actually moving forward towards something on purpose. And I think the truth is, whether we admit it or not, we're all following some kind of plan. The question is it our plan or are we reacting to whatever comes at us? Because if we start to take control of that, even in small ways, the outcomes in our lives become more predictable, really, more satisfying and more meaningful. If good planning really does make such a good difference, though, in the outcomes we see, I think the next big question is, how do we actually create a plan that works? Right? If you are not a planner, if this is not something, if you're not, person who carries around an agenda with you, if it doesn't feel organic, how do we start? What does it look like to move beyond just having good intentions and then start putting some real structure around our goals?
So, purpose, right? And priorities. I think when again, we're going back to a little bit of self discovery. What do we want, right? And once we figure out that thing that we're willing to put time and effort into, then we can get going on what we call the SMART goal setting system. And that's an acronym. And each of those letters stand for something that helps us to make goals concrete and attainable. So the S stands for specific. What is it that you want? You know, and maybe you want to figure out the whys. Maybe you need something. And so be specific. Don't just have this ethereal, I want to be healthier. What exactly about your health do you want to improve? So goals should be designed around those specific outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So you always start with the end in mind, and then we work our way backwards from that goal to where we are currently. And so then we can use that information to make those short-term goals as specific as possible so that they build on one another. Now, the M stands for measurable. Again, we're trying to figure out the goalposts along the way that help us stay on track and that will keep us energized. With each little goal that we accomplish, that success energizes us and helps us to keep moving forward. So it's kind of like a football field with markings, and that helps us to see where the goal is in relation to where we are, and if we're gaining ground or losing ground in our quests to get there. Now, the A in that SMART goal setting is for attainable and achievable. Achievable. Um, here, this is being realistic. Take into account the resources available to us in terms of time, money, ability, and support as we're setting each of those goals. Because if we're lacking any of those resources, that is going to have to go into the planning process as a short term goal as well. The R stands for relevant. So, keeping the end goal in mind, we have to weigh every short term goal in relation to the ultimate outcome that we're trying to achieve. Now, there are a lot of things that we'd like to add, maybe, but they're not going to move us any closer to that final outcome. And if they don't move us closer, then maybe they're unnecessary at this point in our life, right? And the last one is so very important. They have to be T for time bound. So without a time limit, we as humans tend to procrastinate. That's just what we do. And there is where a lot of great goals actually fail. We lose steam or become complacent, or we drift into other less demanding ventures. Our efforts will diminish if goalposts are consistently missed. So we need to set time. You get there and maybe you fell a little short, extend the time or, set a new time. But just keep plugging toward those posts and make sure that you give yourself those time restrictions.
And I think those are, there's a reason why the SMART goal acronym is just everywhere. Um And maybe that is just maybe you are a person that feels like you're just moving so fast, it's really hard to concentrate, it's hard to stop and take time to be specific or measurable. You just got to move forward. I think sometimes people get the itch to just like, I just got to go do it right now and they don't want to take the time to plan. So perhaps we talk about, okay, if it doesn't motivate you to be, you know, smart in your goal planning, if you don't feel compelled, I guess I should say, you don't feel compelled to actually put some sort of thought process into planning. Maybe we talk for a minute about what does life look like when we're just drifting along without goals or direction, and what happens when we don't take the time to plan.
Well, first of all, you're going to meet obstacles, even the best plan, no matter how good we are at planning. Well, we think we got the right goalposts and we think that we're on track. And then there's something that pops up. If we are not a planner, if we do not have these concrete goals with time limits and all of that, we're going to meet those obstacles and maybe just throw in the towel. Um, and instead of seeing the obstacle as something that needs to be conquered in order to keep going on your quest, I think that's where a lot of people give up. So those obstacles are just rampant in life, right? And we're going to see that. But I think we understand too that there are definite perils of not being a planner. People who are not planners have increased stress, believe it or not, a higher risk of mortality. They suffer with anxiety, depression, higher incidence of financial hardship, because living spontaneously makes a person more likely to miss opportunities that would help prevent those things from occurring in their life. Without a clear vision of what we want to achieve, we can fall into a kind of hopelessness or helplessness, that can linger into a state of chronic stress. And we already talked about the physical health problems that come with high stress in life. And because we're always drifting without a plan for our lives, we develop some unhealthy coping techniques to help us deal with the stress and the anxiety. There are a lot of unhealthy habits like using alcohol, drugs, overeating, gambling. Those are all ways that people try to relieve the stress or cope with the financial hardships that they're dealing with. So, without the ability to make clear, decisive decisions, we kind of set ourselves up to miss opportunities that might be available. And we become really prone to this procrastination that's just kind of a problem for us as human beings in general. Believe it or not, there have been studies that have found people who are less likely to be goal setters are at a greater risk of death. And that correlates with the findings that these people are at risk for chronic illness, kind of like cardiovascular disease, stress, digestive issues, muscle tension, as well as financial problems due to healthcare expenditures. Poor planning abilities can also cause damage to our relationships and our careers. And that will leave us with a low self worth and a lot of sleepless nights. And having sleep disturbances is also, really dangerous to our physical.
As you were talking about all of these, pitfalls of not being a planner, the other thing that I think came to my mind is when we talk about goal setting, what is it, the word that I'm thinking of? There's a word that actually causes us to even have a goal in the first place. And for me, I think that word is motivation. So the key is I might be sitting at my desk at work in front of a computer, in work clothes and feel this urge. I want to be healthy. I want to be a runner. And I'm going to go home and, get in my workout gear and go run. 3 to 4 hours later, all of that motivation is gone and it's out the window. And I think this is where planning is so crucial because when we can put a plan in place, I think another thing that we have to be cognizant of is what motivates us. What motivates us to carry through with that plan? There are chores that I do not enjoy, and I give myself rewards for doing those chores. And so there's a few things that I have found over my life that are really key to maintaining momentum. And the first of those things is like you said, and that is overcoming challenges and expecting that they will be there, right? So I think maybe even before you sit down, you have a goal, right? And that's the destination that we were talking about. But then when you sit down to do your plan, just go ahead and plan on the fact that there are going to be things that may come up, right? If you just even dieting, well, what events are you going to be around? Where are you going to be? Where maybe there's going to be some temptations, um, and make a plan for how you're going to react. Those are reachable goals. That in those moments where you're expecting a challenge, okay, well then in that moment, what is the most important thing for you to accomplish?
Okay, if we could talk about motivation for just a minute, and I think we'll do an episode on this, further down the line here, but um, there are things that we have to do, and there are things that we want to do, right? And motivation is more likely to come in the things that we want to do. And I think that's where we need to focus our goal setting on those things that we want to do, because there's always going to be things that we have to do. And if we're setting these goals and dreaming these dreams to escape what we have to do, um, those things are going to keep becoming obstacles in our life. Um, but it's having those goals of those things that we want to do that we can use to motivate us to do the things that we have to do so we can get to the things we want to do.
I think as we are get on our way to getting the things that we want to do, it is important in maintaining that, momentum and our motivation. It is important to celebrate success along the way. I can't recall too many people, with diet plans or, lifestyle changes that don't say, allow yourself when you're going over to a friend's birthday party to have a piece of cake. Don't be and don't beat yourself up for indulging. It's about just finding that balance. And so celebrating your successes along the way, and that success can be sometimes it's measured in miles that we run, right? If we're talking about health, if we're going on with that analogy, sometimes it's about maybe it is about the pounds that we've been able to, take off, and now we feel like we can actually run a little, easier. But maybe it's also about celebrating the moments when things aren't as tempting anymore. Um, and I think when we don't have a plan, life tends to make decisions for us. And that's really the key to why it's so important. Everything that you just mentioned is it's like these are the very real things that are at risk if we don't have a plan. And like you said, those decisions are made for us. And that usually doesn't lead us anywhere that we actually wanted to go in the first place. So I think here's the good news that it doesn't take a complicated system to turn that around. It just starts with simple intentional choices. Writing a goal down, making it specific, giving ourselves a realistic time frame, and then taking one small step in that direction. And then every time we follow through, we build trust in ourselves, and that trust fuels the next step forward. So if we're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or life life is just happening to us, maybe this is our invitation to pause and ask, okay, what's one goal that I can set today that brings me closer to the life that I want to live? Because the truth is, goals aren't just about achievement. It's about creating a life that reflects our values, our priorities, and ultimately our potential. As we close out today's episode, we want to leave you with this reminder: a goal without a plan is just a wish. If we want something different, if we want different outcomes in our health, our relationships, our work, or even our personal growth, it's coming down to being intentional. Setting goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound gives us a roadmap, and each small step on that path builds confidence and momentum. The good news is you don't have to have it all figured out right now. Start with just one goal, put some structure around it, and take the next step forward. Progress is built one choice at a time. And over time, those choices shape the way. I'm going to try that again. Progress is built one choice at a time. And over time, those choices shape the life we're really searching for. If you'd like to learn more about this podcast, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Your input helps shape the conversation and makes perspective and potential even more impactful. We're Gwen and Abby, and you've been listening to Perspective and Potential. Until next time, Keep exploring new perspectives and remember that every small change can lead to something big. Food for thought.
Bon appetit.